Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with two very special guests. Our first guest today is Captain Dan Willis, and he's here to share with us his new book, Bulletproof Spirit, the First Responder's Essential Resource for Protecting and Healing Mind and Heart. Now, Captain Willis served as a police captain, homicide detective, wellness unit coordinator, and SWAT commander. He is a graduate of San Diego State University and the FBI National Academy. He currently instructs nationwide on trauma, PTSD, and the process of healing. So let's welcome to the show, Captain Dan Willis.
Hi, Marianne. Thank you for having me.
You know, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. My goodness, once I picked it up, I could not put it down. I think this is something that a lot of people need to become aware of.
Absolutely. And it's not just for first responders, because everyone has experienced traumas in their life. And trauma is just any experience that has potential to affect you in a very bad way over a long period of time. So, first responders experience those things every single day, but everyone has traumas in their lifetime. And there are proven effective ways to heal and to recover and become whole again from our experiences of trauma.
Well, and so what initially got you interested in trauma and surviving trauma?
Well, I served as a police officer for almost 30 years near San Diego. And the traumas of being a police officer are, people just can't even begin to imagine what first responders deal with day in and day out. And I found over the years, especially early on in my career, the work and the traumas were really significantly affecting my life, my ability to be normal. I call it my heart was really suffocating from all that I saw and just kind of shutting down. And I was becoming someone that my loved ones no longer recognized anymore, just becoming more and more distant, calloused, more and more uncaring, isolated, uninvolved with family, friends, with activities outside of work that I really loved and was very much involved in previously. And I realized that early on, and thank goodness I did, so I could start doing things to recover and heal, so I wouldn't become a victim of this great profession.
You know, it's heart-wrenching to hear this because, gosh, our first responders, they do so much. They're there for us most of the time when we're having our worst day. And to hear that they're going through this trauma as well is heartbreaking. And so I think people, and again, trauma's trauma. This book is great for everybody. But I think just kind of focusing on the first responders initially, I was really shocked when I, was going through your information and, was looking at the number one cause of death for police officers.
The number one cause of death, Marianne, is suicide. And it always has been. More officers, more first responders, fire, all of the professions. More people within these professions kill themselves than all the other causes of death combined, year in and year out. And about 1 in 5, about 20%, suffer from post-traumatic stress. Just how many acts of violence can you see in your lifetime? How many child molest cases and victims? How many fights for your life can get involved in or threats against your life? How many suicides? How many fatal car collisions? And it just goes on and on and on. And we're just supposed to experience these things and then go home and be normal. And without any information or training on how to do that, how to process these traumas that really are poisonous. They're poisonous to your inner spirit, and they're cumulative. They significantly can erode our ability to be resilient, to be happy and to be well, to maintain close, meaningful relationships, and to live a truly enriched and fulfilling life. And if these traumas have affected you to the point where you just don't care about things anymore, you just don't care about life or people, that is not a healthy place to be.
Yeah, that's a really tough place for anyone that's experiencing trauma. So what are some of the warning signs that, a person can identify themselves or family members can see and at least start heading in the direction of getting help?
Well, one of the more significant ones, really the first one typically, as the traumas are building up, is our sleep. About 40% of first responders have significant sleep disorders. And on average, we sleep about 4 hours a night. And you need at least 7 or 8 just for your brain to function and to be healthy and well. So we develop these sleep disorders, getting very few hours of sleep. We can tend to become very, very irritated and angry, or we just get angry all the time because we've lost the ability to be resilient and just to cope with life. We can become more and more isolated, as I described within myself, just distant, shut down. You don't communicate. You talk in one-word sentences. You're not involved with your family, with friends and activities as you used to be. Drinking as a way to cope, or as a perceived need, or taking any other substance because you're just trying to forget, or you're trying to get a couple hours of sleep, or just trying to unwind. Anxiety disorders, anxiety problems. I mean, the symptoms just go on and on and on, and any one of these symptoms is a significant red flag, that something's going on inside that needs to get addressed before it starts affecting every aspect of your life.
So do first responders and even our military need to look at their job as something that's inherently toxic as they start, so they're preparing themselves?
Yes, very much, because when I came to the police department, I put myself through the academy in 1985 when I was a 21-year-old kid. And I had all this idealism, as most of our first responders do, coming into the profession, wanting to protect life and save people and to make a meaningful difference. And we have absolutely no idea that every single bad, traumatic call and experience is going to erode at our ability to want to serve with that idealism and wanting to help and serve with compassion and mercy to make a difference and to do all the good that we can. So it really needs to start from at the police or fire academies and be reinforced throughout a person's entire career about the nature of trauma, how it can injure your brain and kill you. I don't know why they call post-traumatic stress a disorder, because when you think of a disorder, you think they're mentally ill, or you're messed up, there's just something wrong with you. But what PTSD really is an injury. It's an injury to your brain's ability to process and deal with either a critical incident or just an accumulation of traumas over a period of time. And when that part of your brain becomes injured and kind of shuts down, your mind can have a mind of its own, and it's beyond terrifying. If you lose the ability to control your thoughts, to control your emotions, you have intrusive thoughts, you relive horrible things over and over and over again. You can't function, you can't be normal, you don't have your old life, and you can lose hope really, really fast, especially if you're not prepared, you're not aware, you don't have any information about what's potentially coming in these careers.
So how does our spirit enter into all this, with first responders? How does this all come together?
Well, Marianne, that's the most, in my opinion, the most essential element of not only surviving but thriving through these careers, is we have to truly realize, the number one lesson I learned more than anything else in 30 years of law enforcement is that any job in the first responder professions is truly a vocation of the heart. And if you're not putting your heart in your work every single day, being driven to make a difference in your agency, to make it more professional, more responsive to the needs of the community, to make a difference with your colleagues, to make a difference within the community and the people you're serving, if you're not being driven to make a difference every day with every call for service, the job is going to eat you alive. Or at least it has a great potential to do that. The whole purpose of human life is to serve and to do good, to have the will and compassion to help others. And the only people that will truly be happy are those that have found how to serve, how to be selfless, how to be devoted to a cause greater than oneself, how to find meaning and purpose in life beyond our self-interest. And as first responders, we protect and serve, and that aligns perfectly with the whole purpose of human life, of serving and doing good. And the reason why I love police work so much, I loved it every single day for 30 years, and I think about it and I miss it every day. I've been retired now for 5 years. It is that there's just so much tremendous good we can do each and every day. And that should be nurturing and fulfilling to our spirit, to our heart, if we're putting our heart in our work and really trying to make a difference. There really is I really believe, Marianne, there's a great spirituality in service and in the first responder professions. And the DNA of service is compassion, of wanting to help and do all the good that we can and make a meaningful difference. That will keep us healthy and well more than anything else throughout our whole career.
First responders are definitely our heroes, being out there helping as much as they do, and I appreciate everything you've done for our communities over the years. My goodness, thank you. When we look at, post-traumatic stress disorder or injury, is that something that maybe, different agencies should take more, be a little bit more focused on and really focus on training to help people maintain a certain level of wellness?
Yes, and agencies all throughout North America are getting better and better at this. It's just that we had so far to go. Like when I first started back in the 80s, you could get shot and they'd say, put some dirt on it, go back out, you got radio calls. What are you doing? And the whole thought was just get back out there.
Wow.
Don't really talk about it. Just kind of forget about it and move on. And they thought that was the best way to try to prevent long-term harm, which is the exact worst thing you can do. So agencies now are getting better and better, but even today, less than 5% of police agencies have a suicide prevention program, with that being the number one cause of death. There's much more awareness. Every agency has an employee assistance program that has psychologists on staff that give a certain amount of treatments for free. But as I go around the country giving presentations on trauma, PTSD, and the whole process of healing, there seems to be quite a disconnect between the leaders, the commanders of agencies, with them saying, hey, we are here for you. We want you to come forward if you're struggling or having an issue or problem. We're here to help you and support you. But the line officers, they think the exact opposite. They think I would never come forward. Like I might lose my job. They're going to see me as a liability. And there's just a great disconnect that really needs to be bridged. And this whole raising of the consciousness that these things of trauma truly are potentially an injury. And as an injury, they can heal and you can recover completely and be just as good, if not a better officer than before you suffered that injury. So there are more and more programs, more and more information. What I talk a lot about is the PTSD treatment called EMDR. Stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. I've had it done myself. I only had to go one time in an issue that affected me for 25 years and went away. It is probably the most powerful, effective treatment out there. And over 90% of first responders have never heard about it. It's been around for over 30 years. They do it a lot with the military, our men and women coming home from Afghanistan and overseas. And it's a very concentrated, short-term treatment that will last a lifetime as it helps you to heal and recover.
So is the concern that if they come forward and talk about what they're feeling and going through, and they may lose their job ultimately, is that a valid concern?
Well, it's valid in the sense that that's a reality in many officers and first responders' mind. That fear is there, whether it's an actual reality or not. They feel that. And that's one of the main things that the administrations and commanders need to do is help bridge that gap of welcoming people to come forward and proving to them that they are valued, they are appreciated, that we have their wellness, their best interests at heart, and we want them to heal, we want them to recover, we want them to be the very best that they possibly can, not just for their own wellness and the good of the agency, but for the safety of our communities. So we have come a long way, and there are many agencies, police departments and fire, who do a lot of really good work and outreach to their people and helping to alleviate those concerns and issues. But it's still there. And the more that we can do within our own agencies to help promote this whole culture of awareness, that if you do come down with something psychological or emotional, troubling, it is just an injury that can heal and you can recover fully.
Well, and it makes such a difference having this type of education, because then it's not really a taboo topic. Then people can talk about it openly, and and you can have these trainings that continue where people are getting the information they need in order to move forward.
Absolutely, and the more, as I'm saying, that agencies embrace this whole concept of the reality that we're losing 130, 140 police officers to suicide year in and year out, and that there's nothing wrong with you if you develop issues and problems with the traumatic, terrible things we experience every single day at work. And yes, there are things available. There are absolutely ways to heal, such as EMDR that I mentioned before, and just the embracement of the agencies to take better care of one another.
What are some things that, loved ones, family, friends can do to kind of help support our first responders that are going through just having a really difficult time?
I always advise family members, spouses, life partners, and even friends to learn all they possibly can about post-traumatic stress and about trauma and the effects of trauma, so that they can be aware, they can notice things going on in their first responder mate or friend long before that first responder ever realizes what is going on or that something's wrong. Because we're typically the last to know, but usually everyone around us will start noticing, why haven't you been yourself lately, or what's going on, what's wrong with you? And the more that you can actually just learn and study about the effects of trauma and the signs and symptoms, the more that they will be able to be there for them, to help support them and to encourage them in a way that's positive, that's non-judgmental, that's non-criticizing, that really helps them to feel like they're supported. And if you feel like you're supported and people are doing everything they can to help you, and there's just no limit to how we can heal and recover. That support is absolutely critical.
That is so encouraging. And I love how your book, Bulletproof Spirit, is not just for first responders. It's for anyone that's gone through crisis. They can use the principles in here to help themselves.
Absolutely, Marianne, because every person has experienced trauma in their life, either as a child or later on as an adult. Life is filled with traumatic experiences, some more than others. And trauma affects our brain and can alter our brain and injure it the same, no matter how we received it or what we were doing when we experienced traumas. And the ways to heal, the ways to recover are the same. So Bulletproof Spirit really is for anyone who's struggling in life or going through difficulties, who have had traumatic experiences. And there's over 40 wellness strategies in there, just practical things that people can do just day in and day out to help recover and to heal and protect themselves.
Well, I know we've covered some things already in regards to the healing process and what that looks like. Can you touch on, just what someone can expect if they have PTSD and they're looking to work through that? What is that process looking like for them?
Well, the number one thing for someone to come to terms with and to understand is, first of all, they're not unique. There are about, they say the statistics are for every suicide, there's about 1,000 police officers that are going to work every day with symptoms of post-traumatic stress. And about 1 in 5 of every first responder will experience post-traumatic stress at some point in their career. So the first step in healing is just understanding you're not alone, you're not unique, there's nothing wrong with you, because you might be struggling with some things going on inside that you don't like. And once you understand that, and that you can understand that, okay, there's many people out there that are experiencing everything that I am, and there's people that have healed and have recovered. And to put themselves out there, the most important thing in the recovery is to say something to somebody. And it's not that hard to tell your spouse or a friend, somebody, that something's going on inside that you don't like, that you might need some help. And once you say that, people will do anything for you, our loved ones, but often we just suffer in silence. They don't know what to do. They don't want to say or do anything to make it worse, so they tend just to leave us alone. And that's the absolute worst thing for us. So just the understanding of what's going on with you. It's all about what happened to you. It's not about what's wrong with you. Say something to somebody. And as far as the healing process, EMDR has helped relieve symptoms or completely healed people with anywhere from just a few sessions to maybe a dozen or two. It's not something you're going to be doing for years and years and years. So just keeping those things in mind, and do the courageous thing of just asking for help, and you can absolutely get better. Life gets better when you're seeking help.
So you've mentioned EMDR a couple times. What exactly is that?
So EMDR stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. It's a post-traumatic stress concentrated therapy treatment that's been around for about 30 years. They do it a lot with our military. And I've had it done myself, and it helped relieve an issue I had off and on for almost 25 years. And I hear stories like that all the time as I go around the country giving training, that people who have gone and had EMDR, they say things like, it's the best thing I ever did. It saved my life. I should have done it years ago. I have never heard one negative comment about EMDR. So it's just a very, very powerful, effective treatment to help heal that injury in our brain from the traumas and release all those negative, dark thoughts and emotions that have entangled themselves within that memory within us. Just very, 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 very powerful. And to find an EMDR certified therapist, you can just go to emdria.org, and there'll be a tab that says Find a Therapist. You type in your city, and it'll bring them up. So we're really, I can't recommend it enough. It is a very, very powerful, effective treatment.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us and explaining what that is. I mean, gosh, something that can make such a positive impact. I'm so glad that we're learning about it for those that this might be new for.
Well, the tragedy, Marianne, is that over 90% of first responders have never even heard of it. So, and if you don't know that there's a way to heal and to get better, and you've lost complete control over your life and your thoughts, and able to just control yourself and be the person you used to be, you can lose hope really, really fast, and it's beyond terrifying. So that's the good news. I'm glad that here on your format we're able to get the word out that there is something out there that is effective and that can help heal.
Yeah, without a doubt. My goodness. And it has me kind of wondering, why is it important that our communities and, our neighbors know about this, know what our first responders are facing, and how can we better support them?
That's such a great question, and thank you for asking that, because when you think about it, the safety of our communities is intrinsically linked to the health and wellness of the first responders serving it. And when the first responders are suffering from post-traumatic stress, aren't sleeping at all, maybe drinking too much, or having anxiety disorders and all kinds of other issues and problems, they are unable to provide the most professional and ethical service that the community needs and demands. So it is in absolutely everyone's interest that first responders are supported, are understood, and that the public realizes that we're human. And, if you happen to think an officer is short with you or rude with you or something, I'm not saying this to try to explain away bad behavior, but a lot of times it's from the traumas and the stress of the job. And I always tell when I talk to community groups, I always say, when we kiss our spouse goodbye and go into work, what we're thinking about is, I hope I get to see you again. And that is different than any other job that's out there. And I just wish the general public truly understood what our officers do day in and day out for them, willingly do, and sacrifice a part of ourselves for their survival, for their peace, for their health and well-being. I mean, how many suicides can you see before you're affected? How many child abuse cases? How many sexual assaults? How many fatal car collisions? How many fights can you get into? How many threats against your life? And we do it over and over and over again because we know people need us. The community needs us, and it's a part of serving our country, of serving the community, and serving the greater good. And I just wish that community would understand all the different ways that we can suffer in trying to serve them and help them. And the more that they do understand that, then once there's understanding, then I think there can be a lot more mutual understanding and cooperation between the police and the community, of each other realizing, hey, we're in this together, we need each other, and we need to help and support and take care of each other as best as we can.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, my goodness, I can't even imagine what our first responders and our police go through. I mean, coming across a situation where it'd be an emergency, I would have a really hard time with it. I can imagine seeing that day in and day out.
Right. I mean, first responders probably see more trauma experiences. They experience more danger, more heartache in 1 week than the average person experiences an entire lifetime. And we experience that not only week after week, but year after year for 20, 25, and 30 years. And that's why it's so essential to provide information like Bulletproof Spirit, training and resources, because we're not robots. And we deal with things that people were never meant to see and deal with. And then we're supposed to do that and then go home and be normal. The good news is there are ways to do that and remain motivated, to remain driven, to continuously want to make a difference, going into work every day to help people, to serve them with compassion and with mercy, and trying to make a meaningful difference. And when that happens, we all benefit, and the safety of the community improves.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, and let's say, a wellness program isn't set up, you haven't come out and talked to a different precinct or a group. How can someone do this on their own, privately?
Well, the book Bulletproof Spirit has a whole chapter dedicated to creating a wellness program, an agency-wide wellness program, as well as a personal wellness program. And it's mostly just getting people who are interested in trying to make a difference and just asking themselves, okay, what do we need? How can we provide support, help, and resources, training for ourselves, for each other, to help us deal with the negative aspects of the job and of traumas? And just by asking those questions and exploring, because it's really just limited by the imagination. There's dozens of examples I have in the book of things to do to enhance wellness within any agency or just within an individual. It's just having that desire first and that acknowledgement that we need to do something, and to ask yourselves, okay, well, what about this? Or can we do that? Or what does this agency do? So the book really is a compilation of success stories from not only my agency, but all over, of what people can do to enhance the overall wellness of the agency and the individual people serving.
Now, do you have something on your website that allows them to take like an online course or anything like that?
I do. At firstresponderwellness.com, there's a flyer that gives a lot more detail about the training I offer. There's also an online version of the class. There's links to get copies of the book, so links to contact me directly. So just any information about Bulletproof Spirit and wellness training is at firstresponderwellness.com.
I think I have time for one more question here. So If, let's say, a group wants to have you come out and set up their wellness program and do some training, I know you're all over the country doing this. Do you have time still available in this coming year that you could schedule that?
I do, absolutely. And this year I gave about 83 trainings, which is quite a lot. But 2020 is not nearly as filled up as of yet. The first couple months are. But we'll always work something out. If they just reach out and contact me, find out what the needs are, and I will make it happen.
Well, Captain Willis, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much, Marianne. It was my pleasure.
Again, if you'd like to connect with Captain Willis, you can at his website, firstresponderwellness.com, for more information, and also see about signing up for his workshops that he has. They are life-changing. If not, Bulletproof Spirit is a great gift for the holidays. It's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. If they don't have it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. On that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
If not me, then who? This ethos is driving the Travis Manion Foundation to empower veterans and families of fallen heroes to develop character in future generations. In 2007, Marine First Lieutenant Travis Manion was killed in Iraq while saving his wounded teammates. Travis's legacy lives on in the 5 words he spoke before leaving for his final deployment. If not me, then who? Guided by this mantra, veterans continue their service, developing strong relationships in the community, and thrive in their post-military lives. Visit TravisManion.org and ensure the character of our nation's heroes lives on in the next generation. If not me, then who?
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with our next special guest, Dr. Michael Ungar, and he's here to share with us his new book, Change Your World: What the Science of Resilience Teaches Us About the True Path to Success. Now, Dr. Ungar is a family therapist and professor of social work at Dalhousie University, where he holds the Canadian Research Chair in Child, Family, and Community Resilience. Since 2002, Dr. Ungar has directed the Resilience Research Center, designing multi-site research and evaluation projects in more than a dozen low, middle, and high-income countries, with much of that work focused on the resilience of marginalized children and families and adult populations experiencing mental health challenges. So let's welcome to the show, Dr. Michael Ungar.
A real pleasure, Marianne.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. I hear it's getting really great reviews, and you've got to be excited as an author.
It is very nice as an author, especially as actually my first role is as a family therapist and then as a researcher and scientist. And it's been a really exciting to sort of take that information from families I've worked with, as well as people who have been great with contributors to the research I've been doing around the world, and to sort of package that material and make it just really accessible and have a lot of fun in the book, telling stories and conveying some really interesting science in ways that hopefully people can right away apply to their lives.
Well, how important is that? And, and people are looking, especially like resilience right now is a really hot topic. And before we get too far ahead, I'd love for you to share with us what that actually means, because I think it can be like a buzzword and people are kind of throwing it around, but not really sure about what they're talking about sometimes.
Yeah, this word resilience has come up a lot from everything from your community to your child to your own life. What the term actually refers to is our ability, of course, to overcome adversity. So it's not like our everyday coping. It's when something exceptionally difficult occurs in our lives. And then what is it that makes it possible for us to survive and even thrive despite that? And what my work sort of shifts that conversation ever so slightly, because a lot of people seem to think that resilience is all about what's inside of us. It's, if you just sort of change yourself, everything is going to get better. But what the real research shows is that resilience is actually this process of us, interacting with the world around us. So you want that world to be as full of resources as possible. So I like to, in Change Your World, I do talk about the difference between the rugged individual and the resourced individual. And both are interesting models of resilience, but we've overemphasized this notion that if you're a rugged individual, that you're going to be able to overcome any challenge. And what we actually know from the science is that people who are also well-resourced, they have family, communities. Indeed, even they have safe streets. They have a government that's functioning. They have, the joke I like to make is, I like meat inspectors, because it knows that when I go to I know that I go to the grocery store, I don't have to worry about, what I'm going to eat and that type of thing. All these little tiny things in our environment, from the way our buildings are built to the way our families interact around the dinner table. Indeed, if they even come to the dinner table and turn off their cell phones. All these interactions actually make us more resilient, especially when there's what I'll phrase as an atypically high stress, something that's not in the normal course of our lives that we would expect to happen. When that happens, then we get through it because of our resilience.
What are some of the coping mechanisms that people use to just, get by? And then how does resilience help them to cope better?
Well, it's interesting. In Change the World, I really had to sort of think of all the different research I've done around the world and that of my colleagues. And it occurred to me that there was basically a dozen repeating patterns that you see people who cope well when they're under stress. These are the things that they actually have access to, the kinds of resources that they bring into their lives. Not surprising, positive thinking is definitely one of those 12, right? But surprisingly, it's so much easier to think positive thoughts when our environment also gives us a whole bunch of other things. And I'll give you some examples. For instance, we actually do better with structure. I know people are going to say, well, is that really, even the rebels want, you'd be surprised. People actually like routine. They like that notion of in the morning, you can reassure yourself by going to the same coffee shop, getting the same coffee ordered, that wonderful experience of walking into a coffee shop and the barista, the person serving up the coffee or whoever slides your order. You're the extra strong latte or whoever you are, you're getting that order, and suddenly it's like your day is predictable again. We also do better with being accountable as well. So, if you have a child, you're pretty accountable. If you have a dog you have to walk, you're pretty accountable. This kind of notion of people relying on us actually brings out our best. And of course, other things like, very close relationships with someone who you matter to is going to make it easier for you to get through a crisis, whether that's a major hurricane or a tornado, or where your house is devastated, or maybe just your elderly parent is going through a bout of cancer or has Alzheimer's, and you're suddenly burdened with that, in that sandwich generation between having a child that needs you and, of course, an elderly parent depending on you as well. When we have the relationships in place, those close ones, as well as, a community of relationships, our neighbors, our others that we can rely upon, including sometimes professionals. I live in a part of my country where I like to joke that we're casserole people. And by that I mean, if my neighbor falls, breaks her hip, she gets a casserole or 2 or 3. And if someone's child is ill, well, the whole community pulls together and stocks their freezer full of food so they don't have to think about cooking for a month or 2. And it's a kind of a funny thing, but many communities have equivalents to that, of this notion of everyone pulling together and helping. I also, by the way, it's an interesting one of people seem to do better too when they find in their world places to use their talents, to show their skills, to have an identity. Almost like I sometimes think of like that movie, a very old movie now, I guess, John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever, and he's kind of strutting down the road, kind of thinking, he's all the center of the universe. And it's a kind of a funny image, but in fact, it's kind of what we look for. We want that sense of that we're noticed for something, and whether that's in our homes or in our communities through our volunteer activities, or indeed in our workplaces, but somewhere we want that strut. And of course, other things like a sense of belonging, sense of control, being treated fairly, of course, in our communities, that's really matters a lot. And basic financial, basic physical health, basic financial well-being. It's remarkable, but when you look at like people say who survived well Hurricane Katrina or any of the other natural disasters that have been happening, these factors appear so strongly in the stories they tell afterwards, that they had a neighbor, they had a community, they had a positive way of using their skills, they felt good, they felt in control. A very small example as well, recently there was major wildfires, and what some of the banks and the insurance companies did was they provided people who'd been evacuated, not a psychologist, but they actually provided them with an insurance adjuster. And that sense of, you talk about hope for the future, which I know, Marianne, is a big theme in your conversations, this kind of sense of, optimism and hope and feeling good about life. And so much of that can be triggered, though, by whether or not an insurance adjuster shows up and helps us to settle a claim and gets us rebuilding our home, settling our family back in our community, getting our kids back to school. These routines, these practices, all of that together, which I explain, of course, in Change Your World at length, but all of these things combine to make us more resilient when really bad things challenge us.
And how important is that? Because life is going to have challenges. We're all going to be faced with those, and it really determines our experience based on how we react.
Oh, absolutely. And we have quite a range of ways that we can react. That's what was actually surprising when I began to sort of look into resilience. And, we've done studies all over the world, places like China and in South Africa, and with indigenous peoples across North America, African Americans, people living in poverty, people with various diseases, disorders, this type of thing, mental health challenges. You begin to see, different patterns. Of course, the most obvious one, we're always hoping people just recover, right? You go through a crisis with your family, your child gets ill, you're something, you have to change jobs, you're let go from your job or something like that. We want people to recover, just get back to normal functioning. I get back to my routines, I get back to putting things in order, I go back to my activities, I feel okay again, I'm not depressed. But a lot of people also experience, other kinds of changes. Many of us, by the way, just simply have the resources so we can weather. We kind of dip and slide and climb a little and then dip again. And that kind of normal ups and downs as we go through a crisis, that's perfectly normal. And often it's predicted by simply how resourced we are, not necessarily how rugged we are, but how resourced we are as an individual. And then, of course, you get some people. I'm always thinking of like Mothers Against Drunk Driving. That whole movement was started by mothers whose children had died as a consequence of being killed by drunk drivers. And you think about, that's just not coping. That's something called post-traumatic growth. That's where you take an evil, awful experience and you turn it into where your life just expands to something bigger than you might have achieved without that incredible mishap. And I think I imagine many of your listeners will be able to identify with that, whereas the tragedy has actually pushed them forward. But it's interesting. I also study people who maybe don't look like that. They don't seem to be, excelling. Sometimes, by the way, people do better when they actually withdraw. If you're in a place where, frankly, there aren't a lot of resources to help you, you're not safe. You don't have safe streets. You don't have a safe home. There aren't opportunities for you to find work. We know from psychological studies that if you just keep bashing your head against the wall to try and succeed, but the world around you is constantly telling you you're a failure, that is going to create more stress and more depression. And sometimes in situations like that, until the world around you changes, or you can find a better world to live in, sort of thing, then in fact, sometimes withdrawing, avoiding situations, emotionally shutting down for a time, not permanently, but for a time, can actually work. We see that, by the way, with abused children in homes that are still abusive. They'll actually shut down emotionally as a survival strategy. And in a sense, that's sometimes not such a bad way to cope. And of course, sometimes people just use maladaptive coping. I hate to say it, but drinking and drugs, sometimes people turn to those simply because they're desperate to cope in situations where they feel like there's no other opportunities. What's remarkable is if you give them different opportunities, you change their peer group, like you provide them with an AA or some sort of self-help sort of a group where people are working together to solve a problem. You give them access to treatment. You give them opportunities to use their talents, maybe through work or job or this type of thing. Give them new family members, new access to housing. All of these things have been shown to actually increase people's resilience and often change the self-destructive patterns of behavior. So what I'm learning is whether someone uses an avoidance strategy or a maladaptive strategy, and hopefully people see them for what they are. But ultimately, you want people to be better resourced, give them opportunities to use their talents, find out who they are, and move them in new spaces and places so that they can use their talents and grow and hopefully achieve a better form of resilience, which is more, in a sense, socially desirable. They're participating in society. They're making a contribution. They're recognized for having friends and everything else.
In your book, you talk about the problem with positive thinking. I'd love for you to expand on that for our listeners.
Yeah, it's been an interesting one that when I've been really thinking about resilience, sometimes people really push back against that. They're told just think positive thoughts, hit the yoga mats, all this kind of stuff. And there's two problems. The first one is it puts a lot of responsibility on individuals to change. So, in a sense, all that effort to change, all that effort to think positively, it sort of ignores the context. What if your boss really is a toxic individual? What if you're facing violence? What if you don't actually have access to anything from the healthcare to the opportunities for work or retraining? You're a single mom with 3 kids and you want to go back to school and retrain, but there's simply no funding to do it. And then along comes the self-help gurus, and they say, just think positive, believe in yourself, and everything will change. And you know what? The truth is, there's no science behind such an opinion. It's a failed idea. And the other way I can prove that is, if you think about it, we have never as a society had so much access to, everything from blogs and TED Talks to opportunities for self-improvement. And yet on almost every statistic, I'm talking whether it's heart disease, sedentary lifestyles, mental illness, eating habits, relationship problems, divorce rates, actually, which are going down, but that's just because nobody's getting married anymore. All of these statistics show a downward trend. In other words, we are becoming less and less and less healthy when we should based on the efforts of people like yourself, Marianne, and others, we should be getting healthier. We should be getting better. We should be having better sex, better relationships. We should be using less heart medications. We should be in the hospitals less for mental health problems because there's so much great advice. But what that advice is missing is the emphasis is always on the rugged individual. And the science is pretty clear. Rugged individuals do better when they are also resourced. So if you want to change a habit, like say you're too sedentary, well, you have to think also not just about your own personal change and getting motivated. Your motivation then has to be met by a world around you that has, well, a sidewalk to walk on. A funny little story. I was recently overseas in the Netherlands, and this group had decided to put in a park right next to a seniors residence. And the idea would be that the seniors would be motivated. They did all the work to motivate the seniors to go out and go to the park more, walk. They'd be social. They would avoid the social isolation that so many seniors experience, which is a cause for depression and overuse of medications. We know the science there. They put the park in, and then none of the seniors used it. So they went back and said, well, why aren't you using it? And they discovered that the traffic light to get across the road, it was a 4-lane road, was too short. So the seniors didn't feel like they were safe crossing the road to the park where the park was. So what they did was they changed the length of the light. They added a few more seconds so the seniors could, in a very slow way, get across the road. And suddenly the seniors began to use the park. It's a fascinatingly simple idea. And yet it's not just enough to motivate us to change. It's also about whether or not we design our communities, indeed, we even design our families, whether or not those things are done in ways that encourage us and give us the opportunities to bring out our best.
That's so important. And it's interesting when people dig down and kind of discover why things aren't being used, as you're talking with the seniors, they get the answers to then they can go ahead and resolve the issues.
Absolutely. I'm often asked about, families struggle, say, with getting their kids, to the dinner table or this type of thing. And again, we're often caught in this pattern where we don't necessarily, we expect our children to connect to us or this type of thing. And yet we don't look at the world around us enough. So we're stuck in kind of unhealthy patterns. I often say one of the truths, by the way, internationally, we know that families that eat together at least 3 times a week seem to show a lot greater resilience. They can actually withstand stress and conflict and other things. But it's not just about, serving up the food. It's also about putting people in close proximity to each other. Of course, you're asking your kids or your spouse to sit with you for a certain amount of time, break bread together. These are actually the structures that bring out this opportunity for talking, especially, by the way, of course, then you have to change the environment a little bit more. You have to take the cell phones away, right? And parents, we do it too. A lot of kids in my clinical work have over the years complained that they are, quote unquote, digitally neglected, right? That their parents are on their phones, that they won't turn them off, that they won't basically have dinner around a table. Instead, they want to eat in front of the television. All of these things kind of, remove that opportunity for people to make genuine connections. And it's those connections which, let's face it, when a kid is going through a crisis in a relationship or something is bad, like bullying is happening at school. I mean, the only way you as a parent are going to know that is if there's this kind of, capital is built up, this kind of notion that you have over time that the child knows that, okay, there's going to be a dinner, there's going to be a little bit of a prod, and a conversation is going to occur. Even better, by the way, if we as adults model for our kids and we show them how to share about our day. I always encourage parents, stop pestering your kids with endless questions at the dinner table. Don't say, how's your day? And did you get your homework done? And what are you going to do? And who are you visiting? Like, what about us talking about our day? Oh, I was at work. I barely got through all the tasks I had to do. I have no idea how I'm going to prioritize these things. My boss is just loading this stuff on. It's really, really tiring. You'd be surprised the number of times I've heard 8-year-olds pipe up and say, well, Daddy or Mommy, you should really, and then they offer some sort of clever little suggestion, which also, of course, means that they're engaged, that they see themselves as part of a family. It's all these little changes in the world around us that seem to accumulate and make our lives just make us just much more impervious to stress, avoiding that awful load that kind of burdens us at the end of a day, that turns us then into sitting on the couch, turning to, alcohol or whatever it takes to kind of get through the day or the evening, and prep ourselves for the next day. Suddenly we're having these more meaningful experiences. And that's what actually the science says is actually what's going to decrease your medication use, decrease your unhealthy habits, by, in a sense, not just changing your own attitudes, but changing the world around you.
I love that. I love getting kids engaged in discussion. And what a clever way to do that, because usually parents are asking their children, like, how was your day? What's going on with you? And there must be some pressure there.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's always that sort of dynamic of our kids feeling like they have to perform, and we all have that. I've raised a partner, and she brought 3 into our relationship, and I brought 2, and they, we each have lived through that surly teen years of getting eye rolls instead of comments and conversations. You got to just kind of laugh a little bit at it. It's a phase, but there is something really nice about structuring our families and our homes. Unfortunately, people have to, often think about the decisions they're making. Also, a lot of us live in suburbs. I do too. And it comes at a cost, of course, right? Because again, thinking about the world around us, we're maybe motivated to exercise more, but then we're commuting an hour each way to work. And here again, something as simple as asking our employer to stagger our work hours so we're out of the heavy congestion, and maybe we can get our commute down to 30 minutes instead of 60 minutes, which frees up an extra half hour. Maybe our workplace installs a gym, or maybe there's a gym on the way to and from work. Or even better, you're going to find a friend who also wants to get the gym membership at the same time. All these little changes are going to actually make it easier for you to put that exercise routine that you promised yourself on January 1st you were going to put into place to actually happen. And again, what each of these strategies do is they tend to, if you've noticed in each of the examples I give, they tend to bring us more than one resource at a time. My tease is I do have colleagues that sometimes like to offer people, self-esteem workshops. And what it is, sit here and think positive thoughts about yourself. And if I sound a little cheeky about this, it's because they don't work, actually. The long-term outcomes are really awful. They produce almost no sustainable long-term change, and yet that's often not told to people. But what we do know is if those initiatives, if you're part of a self-esteem initiative, or you're going to do that, work on yourself, and you do it as part of a group, so then you're going to tick a few other boxes. Well, one, you're going to feel a sense of belonging to a group. You're going to sort of form some other relationships through the activities that you form. Maybe you're going to share this new person, this new self-confident person. You're going to sort of share that identity with others and get people to acknowledge it and recognize it, maybe at home, maybe through a volunteer activity, maybe on the job. Each of these small strategies will actually give you a cumulative effect of the resources you need, others recognizing you, relationships, sense of belonging in your community or somewhere else, physical fitness, a sense of well-being, centeredness. All these things accumulate and begin to work one off the other. So I often say to people, well, you want to change your world, great. Or you want to change yourself, okay. But make sure that when you do the change, you're thinking in a little more complex terms. Just trying to change one little tiny thing, unless that thing has a snowball effect, it is probably not going to be sustainable. It's not going to create a long-term effect in your life. And probably you'll, like I said, a gym, you start going to the gym, but nobody notices, or it doesn't kind of create a sense of community. You're not going to sustain it. Most people leave those gym memberships by March, and the gyms are empty by June. So, it's very clear that these things don't really work unless we also change the world, as well as changing ourselves and our attitudes towards the world.
So why does taking risk make us more resilient?
It's a great question. That has been such an interesting finding in some of the work I've been doing. There is I'm almost phrasing it as the risk taker's advantage. that there's something about when we're putting ourselves out there, and not just risk, but also taking responsibility for others as well, that we seem to be amassing all these different resources. Well, I mean, if you think you take a risk, you're going to understand your talents, so you're going to suddenly have a new identity. If you've never karaokeed in front of other people, then suddenly, but you think you have a pretty good voice there in the shower. Taking that risk of actually getting up on stage next time there's a wedding or some sort of social function that you're at, then suddenly it's like, hey, look at me. I do have a skill. I do have a talent. That your identity transforms through the risk taking. You also are going to feel something called efficacy, of course, which is so important. Our sense of control, that we can control our world, that we're not a victim of circumstances of others. And again, by taking a risk, it's often easy to translate or to understand that suddenly we're up there on the stage, or we're taking a risk. Maybe we're doing a hike we've never done before. We're doing something. Maybe it's just simply testing out those Pinterest recipes that you've always thought are going to fail, and yet it's that risk of sort of trying something new. And I'm always laughing at that because I know. My own partner was sort of teased about, she'll try those recipes. I'm not much of the cook in the family, but she sure is. And she'll joke that she loves to go and look at there's a whole site dedicated to failures. That, the cake that was supposed to look like a dragon that looks like just a green blob. I mean, those things are great, right? You want that to happen in your life. You want to invite, dare I say, failure. Because it humbles us, it gives us a sense of zip in our life. It also gives us a sense to sort of know who we are. And through the trial and error, we're actually going to be stronger. We're going to discover our real talents. Because let's face it, eventually we're going to find something we do well. And that's what you want, right? You want to be able to, coming back to my John Travolta example, if anyone remembers that movie, there's that strut, that sort of sense of look at me. And that's what risk-taking does. It's an advantage in our lives. Especially, by the way, for children. I'm not sure if you're seeing this in other parts of your work, Marianne, but there's a lot of overprotective parenting going on that's just not making our kids resilient anymore.
I would agree with you on that. My goodness, Michael, we could talk all day long. I loved your book, Change Your World. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
For sure. I have a website, michaelungar.com, and it's UNGAR for Ungar. So it's michaelungar.com. Lots of information and some YouTube videos are all linked there, and more information about the work, and indeed the book as well. The book, of course, is available on Amazon and every other bookstore around. Feel free to take a look at that. Lots of great stories in there. I'm just really love it when people just sort of do that. A Psychology Today blog as well. It's called Nurturing Resilience that I regularly post to. Lots of people post comments there as well and share them. So all these different ways of connecting and keeping the conversation going. And it's been really fun for me hearing people themselves talking about ways that they've changed their world. And that certainly has helped inform my research on resilience and understanding a deeper message here.
And for our listeners that are new to your work, you have several books out. Many of them, I've been looking at them, excuse me. And I mean, there are so many great books that you have available on your website as well. People can see that at the book section and check out all the great reads that you've been working on.
Thanks for that. Yeah, because over the years, I was also writing specifically for parents a book like I Still Love You or Too Safe for Their Own Good. And each of those has certainly resonated and stayed in press for a very long time because of the message, whether it's about overprotective parenting and helping us find some solutions to that decade-old problem, as well as just working with kids from a resilience perspective, talking to our children and seeing them less about their problems and more about their potential. That's certainly the theme of most of my work. Mary, I had this great job. I get to go around the world meeting people who are basically doing well, and then learn from them as sort of my mentors and guides in the research, and as a family therapist as well, and just be inspired by people's stories of success. And it's a great gig in a sense. It's, because suddenly you're like, wow, people get through things, and they get through things with, resources and good positive attitudes as well in some combination.
Thank goodness we have you as a resource for a lot of different books that people can go and check out. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
A real pleasure. All the best to you and your listeners.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ungar. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Change Your World. Change Your World's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Mary Ann. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Mary Ann will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Mary Ann airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmaryann.com for more information.